It's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie...
Political violence only from the far left. That's interesting take. What up, family? Welcome to or welcome back to Colonial Outcasts, the podcast whose only opinion it has in common with Charlie Kirk is the Second Amendment. 2 days ago, we witnessed what I personally see as a human sacrifice ritual performed in front of the world for the sake of maintaining a far more functional ritual of keeping the peasants divided, while the perverse overlords in their high castle can have their brunch in peace while the whole world burns. These past 2 weeks, I've been focusing on liberals and liberalism, how we can reach out to them, how we can deprogram them and bring them into the revolutionary fold. So I can honestly say that I've checked that box in case anybody wants to accuse us of not having at least trying to cover that base, only criticizing liberals. But now that's over. I'm going to direct our focus on the elite's capture of the far right and why Kirk's assassination is only certainly an attempt to reverse any class consciousness that was starting to grow among the right, the unity that we have been seeing between left-wing revolutionaries and right-wing working-class average folk who have started to deprogram and come into the obvious conclusion that their enemy is not the far left, but in fact the people who frequented Little St. James. And I can't really think of somebody better to take a deep dive into the very sketchy assassination of Kirk and psyops than the 2 individuals you see in front of you. We got Manny, who is a pro-Palestinian conservative, believe it or not, who is very much in an alliance and revolutionary with revolutionary leftism, and Brianna, who is a pro-Palestinian activist, humanitarian, typical Midwest mom living in the heartland of Iowa, is surrounded and associated through friends and family who heavily identify as conservative Christians, MAGA, America First, and therefore is holding the line on a very important front for deprogramming those spaces and has a lot of advice for you on how to do so. Brianna also runs the Resilient Relief Fund, which helps funnel money and aid into Gaza. And she also helped us build our website. Welcome, guys. Great to have you on. Y'all ready to dive into some conspiracy theories? We haven't done that in a long time on this channel.
Oh, yeah. Always ready. Always ready. But I want to show something first as we address Trump's radical left claims. Could I bring something up on my screen real quick just to show the audience? Yeah, so he claims radical left, right? Now, I'm speaking as someone who, grew up predominantly identifying as conservative. But what's interesting to me, right, is when you see this right here. Let me share my screen. You guys can see my screen okay, right?
Yes. Here. Well, I can't see.
I'll bring up the Charlie. I'm going to bring up on NBC since they're a relatively trusted news source, right? So let's talk about real quick. They said the radical left, right? That was a speech. But right here, it said there's a background that says that. Let me go here real quick. So the background of this person, right? He already has some felony discharge. He has some felony discharge of a firearm. The guy has some serious background history with him, right? But the key part here, right, is that he is a Republican. His parents identify as Republican. Let me bring that up on my screen real quick, just so we can see Charlie Kirk shooter, just to the audience. Political background. So I'm not going to say Hollywood Life, but this isn't a very trustworthy source, so I'm going to call it out. But basically, the shooter, Charlie Kirk shooter, right? His parents identify as Republican, right? And his dad, it works with I want to say the sheriff county's department within Utah, or not Utah, but he came down from a whole other state. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for the moment. Let me pull up the proper facts because I don't want to distract the listeners.
Well, I'm not seeing your screen, FYI. It's not showing.
I'm good to go. So let me pull that up while we're talking. Let's talk through this. The background of Charlie Kirk's shooter, right? The president labels him as a far left radical. There's some propaganda going out there saying that on the cartridges or on the discharge sniper cartridges that there were pro-transgender, anti-Semitic writings, but those have been proven to be false. And the actual shooter, the suspect that was caught, Tyler Robinson, his parents are known to be Republicans. So maybe we could dive into that a little bit more. I'll put the facts.
Yeah, let's cover the quick facts about Tyler Robinson. So he's 22 years old. He was arrested in Washington County, southern Utah, about 250 to 260 miles from the scene of the shooting in Orem. He was not a student at Utah Valley University, but I actually was. I actually was a student at both of those universities and got some college credits because I used to live in Utah on a military base that's known as Area 52. They call it because they considered it more classified than Area 51. And I guess like you said, he had Republican parents. He was registered as a nonpartisan. So we don't know too much about the guy more than that, other than supposedly a video show that he left the roof. He escaped through a neighborhood and then somehow made it all the way down. But there's a lot of sketchy, conflicting details. I mean, there's so much that's sketchy about this, and we can go into all of that, such as the two-man spotter team, which included one of Charlie Kirk's personal bodyguards, who is not an unknown character. He has been seen with Charlie Kirk in previous appearances. So that was the guy in the black that you saw in the video that gave the hand signal, along with the guy in the white with the white cap. So that's him right there. So this is at a completely different event. So that is obviously Kirk's one of his personal bodyguards. So just to cover that base there. But I wanted to go into real quick before we get into Brianna's information, which is very interesting. Let's talk about just what is sketchy in general about this. So
sure.
What we do know is that it was definitely it was long range shot. We don't know how long range, not terribly long range.
400 feet. It was 400 feet from the tip of the roof down, and it was less than a quarter of a mile where the tip of the building to the speaking stage was. So 400 feet at an elevation like that, that's about less than a quarter of a mile. That means that the scope the person would have used would have had Charlie well within his range. I think there was also, I need to find the video, but there's a highlighted red dot on Charlie about 5 to 10 seconds before the shot was fired off.
I've heard that too. I haven't seen the video though. Now supposedly the actual rifle was a Mauser bolt action 30-06, which is a very powerful round. It's used in hunting. It can take down elk, and that distance is not a problem for that type of round. And I mean the effective range of that round can be up to 1,000 yards, which is insane. So with a good sniper, even good snipers can a good sniper can hit a target from 1,000 yards out with that rifle. Now there is some theories about the bullet, about where the bullet struck. People have wondered, why did his shirt move? A simple explanation could be simply the wind from the bullet going past, but also there's some theories that he was hit in body armor that he was wearing a front plate, and that the spalling from the bullet severed his carotid artery and possibly hit his brainstem, which caused him to paralyze up very quickly. So that is a possibility that he could have been hit at right here, because there was a sniper I saw, another Marine sniper, who was giving an explanation about this, about how it's not typical for a sniper to aim for the neck because that is such a small target group. What is known as the minute of angle, which is basically what's your most likely diameter of where the bullet will hit. So your minute of angle is okay, if I'm aiming from this distance, even with the sniper rifle, most likely if I'm a good sniper, I can know in what grouping I can hit. So whether the variations in the bullet, there's imperfections on the bullet when it leaves the barrel that can cause slight variations in the trajectory of the bullet and where it hits, windage. And then, of course, the speculation on the 2-man spotter team was that they were giving windage calls to the sniper. So if you're a sniper with the scope and you're seeing, and you got your scope on that general image of Kirk and the stage, you're moving your scope and your point of view to see what the spotters are telling you, and then adjusting accordingly. It could make sense. Either way, what I'm thoroughly convinced though that 2-man spotter team was indeed giving signals to somebody who had their sights on Charlie. But go ahead, Manny.
Sure. So when you're looking at a sniper, right? So when we learn just basic Marine Corps boot camp, when you're firing, whether it's a saw, or let's say you have specialized training, additional training that requires you to use something like a 50 caliber sniper or something similar like a low grade sniper, like a Mauser. What you'll see is that a 2-man team, that would mean that there's 2 people on the roof with him, and given the power of the sniper to control breath, sight, and alignment, right? Because we know a scope moves based on how you breathe, right? Look at a Mauser is a very stationary, low weight type of sniper rifle. Right. The thing that's questionable though, right, is that it's not impossible at that trajectory. If you look at the shooter who attempted to assassinate Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, he was supposedly less than 200 feet away on a center, already positioned on a center elevated area. Folks in Trump, so if a sniper can hit the ear of Trump at that close, 400 feet at an elevation, aiming down with direct view into the tent, it's not impossible for the sniper to hit, but it would take signaling and to suggest or to signal the sniper or the person shooting when to take the shot. Now, when you look at when the shot was taken, it looks like there were 2 or 3 forms of signaling going on, but there's a question of where the round came from. The guy next to him, all 3 guys look to be a part of Charlie Kirk's immediate security or social circle whenever he goes to give those speeches. But there's a question of, is there an object under the elderly man who's to his far right, shooting something outside of out from the back of his shoulder? So when you look at the question becomes is, we have to question the size of the round and the diameter of how Charlie was hit. It looks like a sniper bullet came in. If it was at a sideways angle from a pistol of some sort, right? We're looking at the power of the round, but within 400 feet, it's not impossible. But then for the sniper to hit him, the question is how much experience. The shot that was taken that killed Charlie Kirk looked to be not only coordinated, but the person who hit him with that one shot, one kill method was highly trained. So you have to question, how trained was Tyler Robinson in this action if he is a suspect, versus the quality and the immediate impact of the shot that was taken. I think that's what we should bring into question here within this kind of scenario.
I agree. Now, Bree, tell me about, you said it was your brother-in-law who has some experience. Can you tell us a little bit about his background and what he told you?
Yes, brother, Marines 2 times. And he, while he wasn't a sniper, obviously they do some general training. And also he is an absolute math whiz. So he went over, how many yards it would have been from the building to Charlie Kirk. And that was roughly between 190, 200 yards. And then he calculated what the elevation would have been. I actually wish I would have wrote this down somewhere. But he had calculated that based on that, through Google satellite geo-tracking, that he figured out these estimates. And he said that would have been at a 5-degree angle. And he said, you guys were speaking about a little bit before, that typically they are trained to try to aim for center of mass, which is, if you guys can elaborate on that a little bit more, there's like it's not suggested to aim for the neck, right? Because that is such a small
Yeah.
target. Yeah, so center of mass. So, and of course, he talked about all the external ballistics that go into that, and possibly why spotters would have been needed. Because you can see a lot of the conversation online. People think that shots like these are similar to what we see in Hollywood or in video games.
Mhm.
Those are just cinematic tropes. Like, that's
Yeah.
not really how that works.
Yeah.
So he said, even if his opinion was, even if the shooter was very well trained, that in that situation, if you want to make sure that it's only one shot that achieves their goal, that you're going to want the spotters. Um,
Mhm.
uh, so, and he said because it hit the neck, he didn't. He said either one, he's that's a very highly trained, fantastic shooter, or two, he was aiming for center of mass and still didn't quite hit his intended area
Yeah.
target. But yeah, so I'm trying to think. I think that's kind of what I got. So what
Yeah.
I at least retained from him, especially as someone who has no background in this, or knowledge of this information. So he tried to break it down to me. So
Yeah. It is kind of weird that you would aim for the neck. That's either really skilled and they have a weapon that has yet to be released on the civilian market that can have that type of accuracy to hit within that small of a shot group. But also, I do lend some credibility to the idea that he was hit in body armor, and what we saw was spalling. The spalling. If you don't know, I can play a quick video of what spalling is. Just give me a second. I'm gonna share a screen, and we got so much to cover with this. It's too much almost because we haven't even get into the reason why this happened. Um,
Also, down in the, if you want to show people while you're finding the video, what a Mauser sniper looks like. I added a snippet to the images we can show. To what you're saying, Brianna, that the split, right, with how possible is it for someone to hit in that group, right? When you look at the carotid artery, right, like you can bleed out fairly quickly, like the type of training someone would need for that shot, right? And I know I know some guys who can hit a target from about almost a 0.75 to a mile away. And that's, if you add that up in yards, it's pretty freaking far. And what you see with this shot, right, is like, if I were to look at the shot, it's almost like someone, example, when we're in boot camp, in Marine Corps boot camp, using a semi-automatic rifle, the M16, shooting at about 200, 300 to 500 yards, there's some Kentucky windage that happens when you breathe. And just by breathing a little bit, you can knock your shot down by 2 to 3 inches. So the only
mhm.
other explanation I would say is that maybe the person's breathing dipped, and it went from, instead of hitting Charlie Kirk in the skull, went to the neck, but to go down into the left like that, right? Center of mass would have been straight into the chest, you know? And it's the type of training. And I think the reason why I lean on the fact that this was a organized and well-placed hit, and this person had enhanced training experience, I want to almost say that this Tyler Robinson kid is either was trained by somebody, or that there was a second shooter and Tyler Robinson is the decoy for the getaway. But we'll get into that. Let me pause. Yeah.
I just had a question on that. So I saw a video, maybe you guys came across it too. Come to find out that he is incredibly smart with testing. Um, he tests at the top 1% of, like, as far as his intelligence. So I didn't know if that's something that, like, you do enough studying, practicing, you could figure it out, or
Well, you're talking about so you're talking about a polymath, right? So, for example, right, when it comes to shooting weapons, I know how to shoot about 14 different styles of rifles with sub adjustments. I can shoot about 6 to 7 different types of pistols. There are people who, especially if they have an engineering mindset, are able to figure stuff out fairly quickly. How easy it is to buy? How easy is it to buy the parts of the right rifle that you need, and then to buy the rounds at a whole separate location to practice shooting? Now, what gets me is the fact that the kid that they're claiming is possibly a true Israel dispensationalist Zionist fanatic, which means if he's from Utah, he is a Could possibly be a Mormon, Zion, dispensationalist. We don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area, right? But the question is why would someone like this be activated or be inspired one day to kill a person whose very position has been pro-Israel since the beginning of his entire career? What would change that would inspire the person or handlers who influence someone like this, who is highly intelligent, which means he did not operate alone? And how did he get that far away from the how did he get into the school? How did he get to the top of school when in a keynote speaker event like that with someone who has millions of followers usually has security out to the door and around the block? That's part one. Part two, who aided and abetted this kid in getting away?
Which I have a couple questions now that you're on this line of thought. One is they claim that they found this weapon in the woods, right? Fully assembled, I take it. If you watch the footage of him coming off the rooftop, he's not holding any kind of weapon that's fully assembled. So how quick do you have to be to make your shot, disassemble your weapon, throw it in your backpack, get off the roof, reassemble it to put it in the woods?
So you have 3 parts of the Mauser, right? And that depends if the buttstock is fully assembled, which means you have to unscrew it to undo it, or if it has a collapsible buttstock. To me, it would almost say, if I were to look at this, and I'm not going to go too far off of the beaten path, if he had help getting into the building, the rifle that was disposed of in the woods, which was miles away from the location where the shot happened, that would mean that there were 2 rifles. That would mean that the rifle that took the shot was left on the roof, and the rifle that they're saying took the shot might be the same rifle, but to disassemble it, you have to undo the scope, right? That takes about anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes in the time that you need to run. To just take the scope, because the scope's usually bolted. To take a shot like that, a power shot, depending on the round, I want to say it's definitely not a 5.56 round, right? It's a sniper shot. That's a single bolt shot rifle. And then if the buttstock is not collapsible, to pull that apart, you need a special kind of screwdriver to undo it. That's easily going to run you between 5 and 7 minutes. I don't think you'd have the time to do that, especially when you're
think that the first man, George Zinn, who was arrested, distracted them long enough?
Well, I mean, when you look at how far this kid got, right? How far this kid got, I think any initial arrest was meant to be a diversion. I mean, if we've seen through, sorry, you were going to say something.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish that thought. And before we get into George Zinn, I want to first go over the 2-man spotter team. But go ahead, man.
Yeah. So when you look at the time it would take to disassemble a rifle that doesn't have a sniper rifle that doesn't have a collapsible buttstock, you need to take the scope off, right? And if you look at this type of rifle, if you could show the picture of the rifle, Mark, I have it uploaded as a snippet, but I don't think I can present it.
Yeah. Where is it? 1 second. Here we go. So this is
the Mauser. So if you look there, if you could take the mouse and put it over, if you look right under the sniper scope, do you see that how it has that side fold there? So it's possible he could have folded the rifle, right? But you can't the time it would take to try to get the scope off, right? You see that it's bolted in, and you can see that the very edge, like the actual barrel, you can't undo it. So the only thing he would have been able to do is to fold the buttstock in order to load it back into the bag. Then it becomes a question: did he have a Pelican case, or did he have an unassuming bag that he could carry that sniper rifle in, right? Because on average, that sniper rifle probably weighed between, maybe, depending if it has a cartridge in it, not a cartridge, but if it has a cartridge or just has a single bullet loaded, probably going to weigh maybe between 5 and 7 pounds. That's not including the scope and everything else with it.
Right. Yeah. So it's and he had a backpack on, but I know that backpack a little bit too short to carry all that, I think, in my opinion. And again, it would have to be now, as far as I know, these Mausers, they don't have a lot of detachable parts as far as breaking it down. This would have to be a type of Mauser that you can break down, right? And even if you could, you're muted, Manny.
No, I was agreeing, and that's why I'm thinking, even with the foldable buttstock, Right, like you see right there where it looks like it has like that kind of like crevice. You see the shadow right there. Even if you could fold it over, it would still pop out because an average rifle is like maybe is probably bigger than the size of my screen. But if I were to lean back and you were to like estimate that, right, you're talking about if I half the buttstock would fit right here in this camera angle, and then I'd have to lean all the way out holding the rifle for you to see the full thing. I just don't see how he
Right.
got this out of the building. And this type of shot he took was, it looked like it would have taken a two-man team for signaling. Then the following question is how did he get out with the rifle when everyone, even with people panicking, someone would have noticed him, right? That's one. And two, how did he get out of the vicinity when the school would have been locked down? School would have been locked down. There would have been security, right? And there would have been police. So how did he even get it up to the roof? The trend we see with the attempts versus these inorganic events that looks like they're planned, the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, the assassination in front of the Holocaust Museum here in DC, done by pistol, not by rifle, separate, right? And then this event here where Charlie Kirk, a right-wing pro-Zionist, pro-Israel defender up until recently, is shot by a kid who scores in the 1% of being highly intelligent, as Brianna said. And two, maybe he had access to the weapons, right? Because his father works for the Washington County Sheriff's Department, but it doesn't say if maybe his dad was a good shot and taught him how to shoot. I think what we're missing here is, was he trained as a kid because his dad might have been a police officer, or two, did he have training outside that someone reached him?
And again, that is all if Tyler Robinson was the shooter. And that brings us to the next point, which is the two-man spotter team, which everybody's talking about. I'm going to play this video real quick. It's a close-up. So you see the guy. Now, here's where people are like, the water's getting muddied. This is a profile angle of Charlie Kirk, and these two men right here, a lot of people are arguing, well, they're not even behind Charlie Kirk if you look at the original video. Correct. They're not directly behind Charlie Kirk. They're actually like 5 feet to the right of Charlie Kirk, and I'll explain that later. But they are there. They're just this is an optical illusion. It makes it look like they're like directly behind him. So as you can see, the guy in the black, that is Charlie Kirk's personal bodyguard that has been seen with Charlie Kirk in previous events and appearances. The guy in the white. So we're going to focus on the guy in the white first, who's going to tip his cap. All right. So there's so this is a replay. So that's him. He touched the side of his cap and touched his ears. Some people are claiming that this was an indication to shift right by tipping the right side of it, by adjusting his ear. And then here's his personal bodyguard giving a very clear signal. People have claimed that this is a spotter call to shift down, shift lower, right? Now, based on your experience in the Marine Corps, Manny, would these be consistent with a spotter's signal to a sniper?
So the question is right, you're looking at windage, right? You're looking at windage. The guy in the right, I think something that I didn't mention before, and I wanted to say this out loud, right, is we know that this was a keynote speaker event, right?
Right.
What I'm curious is, so what you can do is in anyone who's shot a sniper, has any experience with basic rifles, sniper shots, we know that unless the target's in front of you or you have clear sight picture, clear sight alignment, that you wouldn't have been able to get that kind of shot unless you were highly trained. Or go back to the video real quick. I want to point something out that's very possible today. And it's going to sound almost James Bond like. Go back to the video real quick.
Yeah, 1 second. I took it off out of the green room. Let me go back.
Sure. So what I want to bring up about the video is because we know FaceTime and Instagram Live for events like this is very easy to pause right there on his video. Look how his phone changes. So do you see his phone, right? Go back to the beginning of the video and show where his phone is pointed right at Charlie Kirk. Right after he signals. So we know through things like Instagram Live that a person could have had their phone on them when taking the shot. How close would that angle be to help calculate the trajectory?
Well, let's first look. Well, let's look at the long view. I'm going to look at the long distance view to give people an idea of the. Okay, so this is. I'm going to rewind a little bit. Okay, so this is a long distance view. As you can see, the guy in the white is very far from Kirk. He's like, I would say that's like almost 12 feet to the right of Charlie Kirk. The guy in the black is about 5 feet from Charlie Kirk. So, but you wouldn't tell from the other angle because it's an optical illusion. It makes it look like they're right behind him and they're
right. So the signal looks like it was two parts. If I were to look at this, the guy in the white, right, looks like this. The sniper saw him. The guy in the white. Remember, the guy in the white had a cell phone, right? Which means on Instagram Live, you can kind of digitally. Not kind of. You can, if you're a good shot, or you've been training, you can digitally calculate where it is you need to shoot this person. That's why I'm erring on the side of caution. The person who shot Charlie was highly trained. I don't see a 22-year-old kid, unless he had years of experience shooting with his father, living in Utah in the wildlands, right? That I think the first signal comes from the guy in the white. He does a right side, right? His right side of his hat, tips. But I think his cell phone being on Charlie Kirk so that it captures because if you look from the top, right, if I'm aiming down, you see how that tent adds a shadow that blocks out Charlie Kirk's face, which explains why he got hit in the neck. I think that whoever shot him used an Instagram Live or some kind of live video streaming to make up for the distance they lost with clear sight picture and clear sight alignment. And that's where you get that neck shot. But what I think to get the shot closer, I think it looks almost, it appears, I'm not sitting here claiming this happened, but when you look at the video, it looks like the guy in the white in sequence did two signals. His phone was pointed at Charlie Kirk most of the time, right before he signaled. And after he moves the phone away, he moves his camera a little bit further forward to maybe make up for that invisible distance, right? The distance of where Charlie's under the tent, right? Then you see the guy in black whose right arm is visible enough in the left side of the tent. You can see his right arm sticking out in the sunlight right there to the left side of the screen if you're the viewer here. And I think that whoever took the shot, whether it was this 22-year-old kid or whoever was on the roof, used the camera that was pointed, probably doing a live during Charlie Kirk's live debates, because he always records it live, and used that camera to the mobile device to make up for the distance. The problem here is the hit in the carotid artery. Charlie Kirk was hit on the left side, not the right side of his neck, right?
Right.
And so now I think that whatever happened here, there were two signals. It was in sequence. The cell phone was used to make up the difference that the sniper couldn't see from the top of the roof. And that's just looking at it. I mean, how many movies have we seen, and how many real practice snipers have used some kind of audio visual device to make up for the distance that they can't visually see with the scope? When you look at where, like you were saying, Brianna, your brother said that to get hit center of mass, right? Charlie should have been hit in the chest or hit in the head, but because of the shadow of the tent, he was hit in the neck, which was known to be the most lethal spot. The question is was the person who shot him, this 22-year-old kid, or a highly trained sniper who was able to use the two signals to hit Charlie where he needed to hit him in order to get the job done? And I'll pause.
Yeah, so just to cover our bases, again, I want to give room for two theories. There's the theory that this was an intended, like, actual assassination where they were intending to kill him, or was this a staged, kind of like another fight assassination attempt where Charlie survives and now he starts to crusade against the people who did that to him, manufacturing consent for at least a cultural civil war against the far left. So I want to entertain the possibility that the intended goal was to hit him in his body armor, which I do believe he did have body armor on. It makes sense that he would. And I want to cover what spalling is and how it could have been an attempted survival assassination attempt that went terribly wrong that they did not expect. So this is a quick video to educate the audience on what spalling is. I'll just play this real quick. Share.
What we did was we took our steel plate that we've already hit a few times, and to find out how much that spall is going to actually cause a problem for a person, we're going to hit it with 7.62 by 39 as close as we can to the top of this.
Now, 7.62 by 39 is a AK-47 round. It's definitely not as big or as powerful as a 30-06. So think about this. This is an AK round, 7.62 by 39 millimeter, hit spalling into this board, this wooden board right here. So imagine what a 30-06 would do.
See how much pops up into this board. This is a standard 1-inch pine board. There's no damage to the bottom side of it. You want to B-roll that. There's no damage to the bottom side of it. So when it hits, we're going to see how much splatter is going to come up and what type of damage it could possibly do to a person. Cardboard is one thing to be able to see spall. What we want to know is how much damage that spall actually going to do.
All right.
Right. And
Here's
what
the
we want
shot.
to know is how many yards is that away?
At that time,
Not far at all. But let's look at the spalling though.
you could see pieces of metal sticking out of it,
In a-
little shards
in
of
a
round
line.
and steel.
In a line, right? So now that is a 30-aught. That was a hold on, let me remove this off stage. I suck at this. Okay, remove. Okay, so that was a 7.62 by 39 millimeter round that we just saw. A 30-06, if it's hitting a steel plate, which I do believe that he was wearing body armor, which you can see right here. You can see somewhat of the outline of the plating right here on Charlie Kirk. If they were intending to hit him in the chest and then fail to assassinate him in a failed assassination attempt that was meant to be a failure, like Donald Trump's assassination attempt, then a 30-06 round could easily, if it's hitting a steel plate, scatter, shatter on impact, and then go right to the carotid artery. That's very possible. So the only reason why I'm pointing that out is because I want to give room for two very plausible theories. It could have been where they wanted to try to make it appear that Charlie Kirk is being assassinated or is being, targeted by the far left, and he survives, and now he's a living martyr, right? He's a survivor of far left violence, but it went terribly wrong, and it actually did kill him. In which case, they have to now shift gears and make him an actual martyr. It's a possibility. I need to throw it out there. So go ahead, though, Manny or Brianna. Oh. And then we're going to get to George Zinn, which is the next interesting wrench in the gears of this whole thing.
Do you, before I forget, the guy in the black shirt, have you
Yes.
seen the stuff going around about who he may be?
Are you talking about how he looks similar to the Secret Service agent on stage with Trump?
Yeah.
I have. The nose is definitely identical. They have very identical noses. Is it the same guy? I don't know.
So let's pull both. Let me pull both those images. We'll drop them here from the guy on stage with Trump back during the Butler last year, and let's get a full frontal. Let me get a full frontal profile of this guy here with Charlie Kirk, and let's put them side by side. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I thought I had that picture somewhere. I am so disorganized with these videos and these pictures. I would be terrible in court. Like, here, Your Honor, here's the exhibit A, and then my exhibits aren't there. Do you have it? Let me see if I can pull it up. It's supposed to be there. Oh, here it is. I didn't even send it to myself. Okay, 1 second. See, Greg has it easy. He has an Apple. He has an Apple computer, so he can just text himself. I have to upload to a drive and then download it from the drive.
Here's the guy right here with the glasses. I have the one we're talking about. Let me go here. Save here.
Only because obviously we know this is all hypothetical conspiracy talk, right?
Right.
If that is the same man, there are some interesting things to know about said man.
Go ahead. By all means, let's talk about it.
So people are speculating that this man is Dan Flood, and he was conveniently moved to head of risk management last month for Turning Point. And his background is operational intelligence. And it says on his, I want to say, I don't know if this was pulled from LinkedIn, but before joining the ranks of Turning Point USA, Dan worked as an executive in the animal health industry for 14 years. Throughout his career, he was responsible for business development, go-to market strategies, and managed successful sales teams while distributing while distributing capital, equipment, and launching new products and services throughout the market. If you look up who has like major shareholds in that said company, guess what the two top are?
Hmm.
Not only that, but hold on, I had one more thing. No.
So that's the picture, by the way. On the right, picture on the left is actually at the Charlie Kirk event during the time, the assassination, and up to the top right, that's at Trump's assassination event.
So what we need to see here is then what we need to see, right, is that we need to see the man in the Secret Service uniform's right arm to confirm the sleeve, because the identifying marker right there is he has a full sleeve from probably the top of his right shoulder all the way down. You see the tattoo right there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need to confirm, like the face, the glasses look very standard profile, right? The haircut too looks very much the same. But
the nose is identical as well.
And the same skin color too. The question is age, because the guy in the upper right-hand corner looks to be about in his early 40s, very experienced. The guy down in the guy in the left-hand picture looks to be about around late 30s, almost same age, right? Actually, a little bit younger here, if you look at it, right? The guy looks maybe in his late 30s, very experienced, obviously prior service, military of some kind, or some prior service, 3-letter agency, or some type of agency. From the stage, it looks one way. From here, he looks another age. They do look similar, but I don't think they're the same. So we might want to be err on the side of caution.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I started with the if we're going into conspiracies and theories and addressing the things that are going wildly viral right now.
Yeah, so, it's good that we cover all of this, because a lot of people have questions, and I'm not one to stray away from those questions.
So, I'm not convinced. I haven't seen anything that's convincing to me. I don't.
I think to keep it honest, what we want to focus on here is the motivation, the profile of the alleged shooter, right? That they're claiming did this, and the type of skill it would take to have that kind of shot. And then to focus on what was Charlie Kirk's last public interviews from Turning Point with Tucker Carlson till now.
Yeah, we're gonna play that. Let's play that real quick.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna step away. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll play that. Do you want me to play that, Manny?
Yes, play that in the meantime.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to play that while you're gone, so people have somewhat of a reference point. Here we go.
Push back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border. So maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
Oh, Charlie, you should not be asking those questions, bro. What are you doing? So now we're getting into the reason of why. But I want to hear what you have to say, Brianna, about George Zinn. And this is a lot of information, a lot of very interesting updates that we've learned about this guy. And by the way, George Zinn is supposedly the old man who claimed that he did the shooting in the chaos and in the fog of war right after the shot. Can you tell us a little about what you came up with? By the way, she's an excellent researcher, and she's been great.
Yeah. So, of course, we're all curious as to who George Zinn is, especially since it wasn't a thing where, especially since witnesses had said that he said particular things. That is what resulted in him being the first suspect and the first arrest, right? Witnesses claim that he was yelling, I'd do it again, shoot me. And I actually think there might be some video clips of that, like him saying so. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But
I'm sure there is. I haven't seen it yet. There's too much coming out to find.
I want to say I think I did, but I do know for sure that I have a clip from a media outlet actually in the first hours of all this coming out. That's what they reported that the witnesses were saying. Go ahead, Manny,
Yep.
if you've got something to add.
Yeah, to add to what you're saying, what you're pointing out, where the older guy said, and I do it again. Remember how we talked about the distraction to help the kid get away? This is how you know that this was a highly organized. Let me say this. This isn't. I'm not gonna say this is how you know this was organized, but when you look at the kid, his intelligence bracket scoring, the signaling going on near Charlie Kirk with the people who work closest to him that were beyond the security barrier. And then you look at the first distraction to help him get away. And then you see how far he made it. When you look at the dotted lines between those three events, right? The sequencing, the signaling, the shot, the distraction down below to help him get away, it starts to lead you to ask yourself, was this older man a distraction, or were him and this kid, Tyler Robinson, a part of some kind of group that was highly coordinated?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the level of security for a keynote speaker like this, you see how I keep adding to the, like, I'm not going too far at the beaten path, but when you look at, you're like, okay, well, we know that this guy was organized. We know that this older guy purposely did a distraction during the chaos of this entire event. So it leads you to think, how many people were in on this organized event?
Mm-hmm.
When you start to look at it. Yeah,
exactly. When you try to pull something like this off in front of thousands of people with thousands of phones, with all types of angles and points of view, the key is to take advantage of the fact that there's so much information flooding in, and that there's no coordination on how to pick which piece of information you're going to focus on. So we often think like, well, how does a sniper pull off an assassination attempt in this type of highly visible environment? Well, you use the chaos. You use the magician's trick of, look at the right hand while the left hand is doing this. It's very effective. As we know,
is a primary example of that, right?
Right. And we saw this during Trump's assassination attempt, and we've barely even come to terms with how suspicious that was. And I'm going to pull this up just as an example of how even in a highly documented, filmed environment, you can get away with blatant staging. You can get away with so many suspicious things, because by the time that it's done, the emotions are already high. People are flooded with their emotions more than they're flooded with like paying attention to the facts. And
it allows for the insertion of the panic version of the Mandela effect, where you believe it's Berenstein Bears versus Berenstain.
Right.
Or in this case, you have a sniper that, the sniper needs a getaway. So the person's, and I do it against the people think that they start, one, you have the panic happening, right? Mm-hmm. Two, you have the distraction. On top of the distraction, remember, adrenaline and fight or flight rewrites immediate short-term, causes, especially in crowd type groups during panic, fight or flight creates short-term memory loss. It's been proven, yes, right? People absolutely suffer from immediate PTSD. So everyone's version of the exact events that happened will be jumbled. Like someone saw a gunman in the crowd versus a person on the roof, right? Versus what the camera actually saw. And so when you have this influx of conflicting data versus the feelings and the eyewitness statements,
you add the trauma of seeing the carnage as well, and now people are in a state of shock about what they just saw. I'm sure these kids never seen anything like that before in their life. Especially close up. So these were a bunch of white kids in the middle of Utah, and trust me, I lived in Utah, which is why I want to get out of there, because there's no real world experience when I was living there, to be quite honest with you. But let's go back a year and let's look at Trump's assassination attempt and watch some sketchy shit that was happening real quick. This is prior to
20 million people. And that's
so
a little bit.
I want you to pay attention to the guy right behind Trump's calf, the Secret Service officer, and the lady with him. He is escorting these photographers out of the way temporarily.
That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
All right, then there's a shot. All right, now let's look what happens after the shot behind stage.
Oh no!
Okay, the same security guard or Secret Service agent that you saw, he comes back into frame.
We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you.
I love the total Trump simp in the background saying, "We love you, Dad. They shot Dad." Anyways, so here's a photographer that comes back into view who was prior to the shot escorted away from the stage. And this other photographer, now look at the Secret Service agent behind the checkered, plaid shirt photographer with the cap on. He's positioning him perfectly into just the right angle for a photo op, an inspiring photo op of fight, fight, fight. Here we go. The flag is lowered for that perfect shot. From Time magazine. Now, these Secret Service agents are so much more concerned with these photographers getting a good photograph than they are with the actual shooting.
They slow walk him off the stage a lot slower than they should have.
Yep. And there he is.
These two events have a buildup.
Yes, absolutely.
Like they complement each other.
They do. They certainly do.
Did you see exactly when Trump was hit? Was when was at a certain point in his speech, and at the exact point that Charlie Kirk was shot was at a certain point in his speech, and that's when the signaling happened. So my question here for this is, who are we missing from the Trump video to connect it to the Charlie Kirk video to show the similar signaling or signaling of some kind? Because both kids in both cases, if we go back to it, right? Let me find a picture of the kid who was caught. The kid who was caught, who attempted the Butler assassination, was a 22-year-old kid who is Jewish from Pennsylvania. And both profiles of each kid, right, are somehow associated with either being American, being an American who practices Judaism, or a pro-Zionist person from a very vague background, who both seem to be highly skilled at aiming a certain kind of sniper rifle at a certain angle to either almost hit somebody or to actually hit somebody. And when you stack events, right? Remember what I said earlier, inorganic assassination attempts? You pointed out, Brianna, the build up to it. I pointed out the point at which they are in the speech and at which point the shot is taken. Now, when you stack the deck of the attempted assassination attempt on President Trump, it looks as if the sniper wasn't meant to kill him, but meant to maim him for the message, while Charlie Kirk, not being as high or as important on the totem pole, but close enough to the people and influential enough, was meant to be the sacrificial lamb, coming back to what you said, Mark. And when you look at it, two kids around the same age from randomly out of nowhere, right? Two kids who use a similar or some kind of sniper rifle, right? And each event looks as if it was staged or set up in a way to get the most attention, to send the largest message in the shortest amount of time possible. And shortly after, the kid, you haven't heard anything about the kid who almost attempted the assassination attempt on Trump's life. And I'm sure, too, if we don't keep eyes on this Tyler Robinson kid, he will disappear as well. Yeah. It'll be almost like smoke and mirrors. And everything will be about the feeling of the event to drive, push, and kind of prod people's political opinions like cattle. I mean, you already saw the messaging from Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump. I want to confirm this, but the snapshots that they put out, Pray for Charlie's message 20 minutes before the assassination occurred, is almost...
Not to mention the book that was supposedly published on Amazon about the shooting of Charlie Kirk that was done the day before the shooting. And I've tried to dig into what could be the explanation for that. And there's thoughts, well, it could have been a time zone thing. It could have been where Amazon just automatically gave it that date of when it's published. But it was all right. They already had a paperback version of it available. So again, a lot of weird stuff going on. It just adds to the mess. It adds to the fog of war of what's happening.
In the Schofield Bible being rewritten, this mass codified understanding of Zionism through American Christians being educated to become more pro-Zionist. Then we look at the establishment of this belief of this person who's lightly associated, lightly involved in some kind of dotted line to the overall theme of what's been going on for 2 years with the slaughter in Gaza. his adoptive mother's father, her maiden name being Young, father founded this university or ancestor founded this university. They're tied to a university that's specifically tied to Utah and Jerusalem. Now let me remove the dispensationalism and say it's very possible that any pro-Christian, pro-Zionist institution has a university campus somewhere in Jerusalem if they've wielded or utilized a Bible or wanted some established connection with the Holy Land from 1948 till now. But because this precedes 1948 back to 1870, and we know that pro-Zionist lobbies, the planning for these steps from the state of Israel, the purposeful education, and I want to go as far as expedited long-term teaching of Christian extremism that's led to some of these influence attacks or appeared to be influential attacks within these areas. It all has some eerie overlap. I'm not saying that they're all connected, but they're within the same realm of the same teachings of the same establishment with the same connected entity, if we're speaking loosely. When you talk about associated overlap of power players like Norma Zinn's, her father or grandfather being the one who helped start Vanguard?
Her father.
Her father started Vanguard, is what you're saying.
Not like Vanguard, the current day, right?
Not current day, but previous. Now, I don't want to say the irony of connection, right? But is this all political, religious, economically, historical serendipity? Because there's a lot of stuff that's adding up very quickly that doesn't necessarily connect, but looks like it has a connection, and we're not even in the
That's
realm.
always a possibility. We live in an interconnected world where coincidences can overlap at any given time. So it's anything's possible, but it still is, in my opinion, it's interesting to explore, because I do know that these mega corporations have been shown to be very ritualistic in what they do. Like, for example,
right.
Trump's would-be assassin was in a BlackRock commercial, right? So there's BlackRock. You got BlackRock, check. And then now you got a Vanguard connection with George Zinn, which is very odd for a person in the aftermath of a shot to just claim that he did it, right? And it's so you have a lot of irregularities, and the way, I guess, intelligence agencies work when they're doing assassination attempts, they tap people who are unstable and could be a very good agent on the ground because they're crazy. And George Zinn is known to be a lunatic. Like, he's not sane in the head. And that's a perfect subject to use in these situations, because if you use somebody who's not mentally stable, then they offer that perfect degree of separation, because people would just say, "Oh, he's crazy."
You have two profiles of people here, though, that are impressionable: the elderly, who are deemed insane, and the young and impressionable. Which the two cases, Butler, Pennsylvania, and the young Jewish American kid who did the attempted assassination on Trump, and this other 22-year-old kid from a place in Utah, which is known for its hard, more than moderate, ritualistic religious leanings.
Mm-hmm.
He's from a heartland of religious, I don't want to say it's not extremism, religious practitioners, which can sometimes yield religious extremists. But the two profiles, the elder people, the guy who acted like a distraction, who has all these ties, right? And then you see these two impressionable kids, right? And when you look at the stream of assassinations, right? Luigi Mangione, 26. The kid Elias Rodriguez, around 22, 23, right? The kid, this guy, was the assassination of the two Israeli embassy aides in front of the Holocaust Museum. Then you look at this kid who tried to assassinate Trump, or I mentioned that already, right? Kid who tried to assassinate Trump, Elias Rodriguez, in front of the Holocaust Museum. You come to this kid who actually successfully assassinates a right-wing person. If you look at what's happening, there's a domino effect of kids, elderly people, or young people being in this profile that's extremely impressionable, extremely coachable, extremely trainable, and tapped for a specific purpose in a domino-like series of events that are made to look like they're not connected, but they have something to do with some societal issue, some organic versus some being inorganic. And this is an inorganic one. And that's why I keep pointing back to the Butler shooting. It's almost parallel. But the only thing missing is the old guy wasn't at Butler, but the old guy was here to help the young shooter get away. But these two, there's a stream of kids in their 20s, 22 to 26, constantly being tapped to perform the action.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm spinning wheels here, but
No, you're not. You're not wrong.
Can I add to a little bit more of what I just found on the connections to the Brigham Young University in
You can
Jerusalem?
add whatever you want.
Oh,
It's me you're talking to.
okay,
You
okay,
call
okay,
me
good.
up on a dime anyways and tell me.
I do. So, so I said I want to say there are 3 locations. I don't know. Someone can look that up quick. One is in Utah, one is in Jerusalem. So the one in Jerusalem, it says that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints first expressed interest in the land in 1974. And this land was the land that was violently taken, right, from Palestinians in the 1967 war, right? So they ended up signing a 49-year lease with the Israel Land Authority in 87. And they constructed a $20 million, it was $20 million to get this facility going, right?
Adjusted
So,
for inflation, that would be about like the way that the real estate that university is on in Jerusalem, easily 200 million nowadays. But go ahead.
So the interesting thing about this is because I'm like, okay, yeah, we made the ties of how, George is connected to Norma. Norma's father was Brigham Young, right?
Mhm.
Who this university was founded by, named after. So there is strong evidence that suggests that from here on out, I'm just going to say BYU, so I don't have to do the whole mouthful. Right?
Yeah.
That they have ties to war profiteers.
Mhm.
So, and says right here in 2021, BYU's endowment was valued at 2.55 billion. And like many universities, BYU does not publicly disclose how these funds are invested. Nevertheless, there's a strong evidence suggesting the university funds companies that profit from Israel's occupation, apartheid, and war on Gaza. Take, for example, Ensign Peak Advisors, EPA. They are the investment manager of the Church of Jesus Christ. So although the church abstains from what they call sin stocks of companies that sell tobacco, alcohol, and caffeinated beverages, the EPA invests hundreds of millions of dollars in weapon manufacturers such as Boeing, Lockheed Martin, RTX, and a couple other things that I don't know who they are or what they are, but maybe I'll just send you this information later. We can go over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone stand is just gonna say.
Sure. So something I want to pull up is the locations, and I just added locations to the carousel. I don't think I can necessarily present it, but I just dropped the locations of the university just so people can see real-time snapshot.
Are you able to share your
I'm not.
screen? Oh, here it is. There
Yeah.
it is.
So
There you
these are the locations. They do have a study center in Jerusalem. So what I want to do is we're going through this video and we're talking about these overlaps. We drop a real world connection to kind of show the dotted line. And now to come back to what Brianna was saying, we can come back to the screen. I think we can take this off. When we think about universities, if it's a religious institution, they oftentimes will hire a investment manager or firm to manage their funds so that they have what's called plausible deniability. Now, when you look at private universities versus public universities, right? The private universities have a bit more leadway because their endowment is private and comes from private donors, which means they get a little bit more leadway in how they invest and report and disclose their funds. It's almost like the difference between a public offering where people can buy stock in a public corporation where they have to disclose their investments, who has how many shares, what buy-in people have, certain voting authority, et cetera, versus privately non-disclosed private companies that they can tell you, they have to say what their funding is, but they don't have to say who does the investment for them because it gives them a degree of plausible deniability. Now, something to point out just so we can level set is that it's very normal for all universities that have some kind of endowment to invest in something that's related to Israel. If you're a private university in the US in a large major metropolitan area, the likeliness of 10 to 20% of your portfolio being involved with some kind of religious pro-Judeo-Christian institution with ties to Israel is probably very likely especially if you have an endowment above 200 to 500 million. Something in your portfolio is very likely to be tied to weapons manufacturing investment, because a university will not make money just off the tuition the kids have alone. The tuition is what helps wash the money for the indirect, dirty investment. An endowment is something to be looked at in a positive sense, where it does get kids through school, but an endowment is also can be for multimillionaires to billionaires to launder and wash money that comes from unreputable, discussing, or publicly reprehensible sources. And that's where you get the war profiteering or war bonds or weapons manufacturers or distributors. And that's what an endowment can be used for. I mean, anyone who's seen Lord of War or War Dogs, right? It's pretty obvious. I mean, all you have to do is look at public filings and you'll see it. Look for a university and figure out who their investors are, or what board does someone on the board of an investment company who might be a lawyer serve on for a weapons manufacturer. Most of these universities,
Go ahead.
I'll pass it over. Yeah. The last part I want to leave here is most of these board members serve on multiple boards across sectors.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just reading the bottom of it. I'm just adding 2 extra facts for people that end up not going in to research it themselves. BYU actually has a 5-year contract that spans from 2022 to 2027. It's the Educational Partnership Agreement with the U.S. Air Force, and then they have a 5-year one from 2024 to 29 that is 3.7. It's a $3.7 million dollar grant to train and enlist its cybersecurity students to work for the NSA and DHS. So yeah, I just wanted to add to that because there was direct. I mean,
It's interesting we're talking about Utah, because Utah has been a blind spot in the connection with Israel in big ways. The LDS Church has been caught in a lot of scandals of siphoning ties and money that was contributed from their religious body of their membership, and using it for simple the executives and heads of the church in stocks and buying stocks for themselves. And those stocks involved are definitely in war companies that are directly profiting off of the genocide in Gaza. So I find it interesting that we have definitely not talked about the LDS Church enough in connection to Israel. They have huge ties with Israel and the exploitation of West Bank land that has been stolen from the Palestinian people. So it's interesting how all this kind of is bringing Utah back into the spotlight of things. So now that we've covered, I guess, a lot of these shady connections, nefarious motives behind this, let's talk about the reason why. Why is all this happening? Why was Charlie Kirk assassinated? And in my opinion, the reason is very simple. It goes back to this.
Said we need to be vicious just like they are.
Yep.
And I hope our federal law enforcement does what they must to root out the radical left.
Crush the left! Crush the left! Crush the left! Crush the left! Let them come! Let them come!
We must destroy the radical left once and for all. Every radical left activist, every NGO.
Fight, fight, fight! Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets!
That's why. That, in my opinion, is a very simple reason why this is all happening. Just like every assassination attempt that is coordinated with larger forces, the goal is to stoke emotions and divisions. It's a psyop. I really do like all of this conjecture about who did it, how they did it, what were the tactics used, who had the connections to what. At the end of the day, it boils down to one thing: division. We've seen a lot of miraculous developments happening within the working class. We have seen right-wingers uniting with left-wingers. A lot of different subcultures are now very anti-Israel and very pro-Palestinian. We are seeing cross-pollination between left-wing ideology and right-wing survivalism and right-wing aesthetics. So this is a problem for the ruling class. They can't have that. They can't have their subjects starting to see eye to eye on many things. So I see this as a very desperate attempt to stoke the divisions again, or galvanize the people who are hardcore, what I call the SS division of MAGA, to galvanize them further in violent sentiments that they're hoping will crystallize into a civil war. And a lot of people have been laughing at me in the comment section, including, people that I associate with, that I was going too far into saying that they're trying to stoke a civil war. But I think that is the goal here. As
Let me just tell
extreme,
you, for people that gaslight people who look into different conspiracies, I mean, groups obviously conspire. If you have ever read a declassified CIA document, then really joining or even enlightening this conversation, and without criticism, I mean, a lot of those conspiracy theorists were usually onto something. And then when that document becomes declassified, they were pretty much right. So go ahead. Yep.
No. And to your point, the term conspiracy theorist was made up by the CIA in order to blackball anybody who had a valid understanding of the situation, or the psyop, or the illegal state-based operation that was occurring at the time. The CIA coined the term conspiracy theorist as a way to turn general society against people who were already pulling at what Brianna said, the threads of what was going on behind the scenes. It was a way of blackballing and enlisting the public's skepticism against the person who had a piece of the truth that they were trying to piece together, to throw them off the trail. I would say, unless a conspiracy theorist is saying something that is way off the mark and doesn't align up with current valid events, political and otherwise publicly available information, they might have some semblance of the truth. So it's but back to what I was saying, the term CIA, conspiracy theorist, was coined by the CIA, the very people who you declassify a document 10, 20 years later, in this case, 40 years later, the JFK files, and somehow the conspiracy theorist that said Israel was involved in the JFK assassination, Israel's the number one name redacted from those documents. Not much of it. Not much of, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me pause. I'll pause there.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a point or throw out
and
an
keep going.
example.
I'm gonna take myself off real quick, but keep going.
No, you're good. So I'm going to throw out an example for the people that are like, oh gosh, you guys are so nutty. Like you're way off track. Like you're not in touch with reality. I go back to talking about different declassified things that have come out. How insane is it that this is just one example of a Cold War era proposal by the CIA of something they were going to do in Cuba. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they wanted to project a image of Jesus in the sky in Cuba. They wanted to somehow project that in the sky and announce over the loudspeaker that they wanted the voice of Jesus to tell them to renounce communism. So I don't want to be, told that I'm crazy for just simply, thinking of all the different things that could be happening here. When I'm reading stuff like this that is out there, that is declassified, that is proven, they're willing. Right. These people are willing to go to any lengths to do what they need.
So, and to dive in on that, I'm gonna go even further. Every time there was a nutty wild plan, a perfect example was when military generals during the Cold War, right before Kennedy's assassination, Operation Northwoods, wanted to stage an attack against U.S. citizens in select towns. I believe Florida was one of them, to blame Cuba and communism for the attack. There's a list of operations that have occurred or attempted that President JFK himself stopped that were on a list of declassified documents that people labeled as conspiracy theorists were right about, and were finally given the valid credibility that they had on the issue decades later. So you come back to this and you look at this, right? conspiracy theories have an element of truth. The question is who's dissecting it? Do they have the right kind of voice to speak to the issue? And how much publicly available information on the subject, and how much is the public talking about it?
And what's insane is it has to take people like Tucker Carlson to break open the subject for people to take it seriously, which is insane, because it's interesting the lag that's there between, you know, your average American, I guess, average right winger, working class dude, and what the pro-Palestinian movement has been saying about Israel. But now that Tucker Carlson gently broaches the topic, everybody's suddenly waking up. It's insane that it takes that. And that's why, like, I get so frustrated when I see, you know, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens coming on, because it's like, where were you a year ago? Like a year ago, when your audience could have used that information, but now you're coming out after the genocide is almost complete and the ethnic cleansing is almost finished. It's like it does some good, but not what we've needed in this past year or this past 2 years. So
the problem is the FOMO, or better late than never scenario. And I'm going to sound really terrible for saying this, but we're already at this point where we just have to keep busting open the can of worms, throwing salt in the wound for the average American. Whether you're a conservative, whether you're a Democrat, whoever you are, whatever you align to, there's always going to be some segment of society that shows up late to turn the tide. Look at what happened. It took 10 years for apartheid South Africa to finally get called to account, right?
Yeah.
It took maybe even longer than that. It took other countries to be called, or for the right people from different sectors of society to finally come to the point and say, oh, this is enough. In this case, when you look at the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens, these are people that were so deeply entrenched within their own establishment, their own sector of the establishment, that it took the podcast bros first coming to light and saying this is fucked up, because you need a wave of change in which all people can move in that same wind. If the wind of sales if the wind is in the sails of people changing their political and ideological foundations, right? It took the extremism of the Israeli government to shift people's viewpoints. And it took enough people making enough noise from the base, whether you're a liberal, Democrat, whether you're conservative, right, progressive, it took enough people from the base raising enough noise, threatening to deplatform these people. No, not even that. It took first the establishment deplatform these people. Then these people realized they needed to consolidate the power of their viewership. And they started truly realigning with their base. And that all comes down to what? Dollars, right? But to keep it short, coming back to the fact that where were they? The question is, where were they? They were exactly where they were going to be. And no matter what we did, no matter how much noise we raised, it's the same as the liberals who still claim that Israel is not committing a genocide.
Yeah.
So for the conservatives to even show up to this point, right? For MAGA to experience a fracture is like the coming of Jesus. It's not really Jesus coming at that point, right?
Yeah.
No offense to some of those people who, if you are religious in the background, but coming to Jesus was seeing literal children slaughtered and then have a state tell you that it's in your religion demands that you support us doing this. But in some cases like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens on the right, who happen to have an actual spiritual basis, right? Whether they were on the wrong side of history at first, sometimes you have to give people a little bit space. We're on the wrong side of history at first to come over to the right side of history. And although it's late, it's been done. The fracture that you and I talked about a year and a half ago is there now. The fracture we talked about 6 months ago, now, where were they? Now the question is, what do we do with the fact that they're here now and all the people they bring with them? What do we do with it?
Let's talk about this fracture for a second. I really want to go into this fracture. This fracture is very interesting to me. And the fracture, I guess, can be labeled, I guess what it really boils down to is MAGA versus America first. And that's the interesting thing about all this talk about civil war. With the assassination of Charlie Kirk, if the intention was to create a civil war, here's the problem. If you have that intention, it's not that simple, and it's very complicated. And I was kind of thinking about it. Okay, so you have Charlie Kirk's base, which would be considered MAGA. They are you're a conservative, xenophobic, pro-Israel crowd. And then you have your Nick Fuentes's America First crowd that hates Charlie Kirk. They hate Israel and they hate Trump, but they are right wing, extreme right wing. They include a lot of neo-Nazis, a lot of white supremacist groups. So what are we going to be seeing? Are we going to be seeing a civil war between Nick Fuentes's America First group and MAGA? Because that's what it's kind of, if they want a civil war, if they want to instigate a civil war between the right and the left, it's going to be really hard if they can't even consolidate MAGA and America First, because there's a huge divide that's forming between those two right-wing bases. They are almost split, I would say.
I want to jump in here. The fracture, right? And mind you,
Yeah.
I was someone back in 2016. Let me point out very clearly, I was someone in 2016 who was tired of the prior president Obama that I served under. I was tired of the bullshit promises that we'd seen and what I grew up with in a 2008 recession, me graduating high school in December of 2008, right? Post almost economic collapse. That was my entrance into adulthood.
Yeah.
When I look at, that's what pushed me on top of my upbringing between Florida, between Chicago, my upbringing, looking at MAGA first and America First, I don't think there's just a divide. There's a three-part fracture, because there's a part of MAGA that's corporate, that is folding into the Trump crowd. They're the people who are funding the money. Then there's the base of MAGA, which is like, what the fuck are we doing? Then there's the America First, right? That's like, no, it's Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, who are the base of, who just want to fix what's going on in America. And then there's the extremists in America First, right? Which are your neo-Nazis. But what you have happening in this fracture, right, of all of it bringing it together, is that there's a third rail here that I think that we're ignoring, like about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's base, he was shifting his stance on his view of Israel and foreign entanglements of the U.S. And the first blip that could be seen is if you could grab the tweet of when Charlie Kirk asked his base, he asked his base, should we go to war with Iran? And I think where Charlie Kirk, before the Turning Points event happened, was he changed his stance on foreign policy for U.S. And although he was pro-Israel, his stance on foreign policy, and I'll bring up the tweet real quick. Let me do that. The Charlie Kirk tweet that I think started his change, right? Even though he was trying to be very pro-Israel. Let me bring it up here. Charlie Kirk tweet on should we go to war with Iran? Let me show you this real quick. This tweet here, I'll bring up an image. Charlie Kirk did a very, very bold vote, and I want to upload this into the chat. Please, it's showing up right now. He did this back in June of this year, okay? His stance was changing. That's why I don't think that the rail of the Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk, I want to say that this is very Israel-centric, because his change on foreign policy, even though he was still Israel first, right, was already happening as of earlier than June and April, right? During the Turning Points convention. Let me drop that in the chat here. And I think the starting point of his assassination, the plot to assassinate him, started well into when he dropped the vote on when should we even go to war with Iran. His very blatant just questioning that was the start, I think, of the plot for his assassination. The question was where and when. And the reason why I want to tie this back to Israel is because if his stance changed at Turning Points while he was still trying to be very pro-Israel, it was more to appease his base. There's several videos of him, and if you could bring up the Charlie Kirk tweet while I speak to it.
You said you sent it in the chat. I'm not seeing it.
No, not the chat. It's in the carousel of uploaded images.
Okay, I'm not seeing that either. Okay, here it is. Yep, there it is.
So Charlie Kirk has been a very ardent pro-Israel voice, and he is a very key pillar in the base of Trump's overall 80 million supporters. How many, I want to say, if Charlie Kirk can garner 500 million votes within less than a minute, plus 6.8 million views, on top of what's Charlie Kirk's total following? Charlie Kirk's Twitter following alone?
I have no idea. I don't go on
Twitter
Twitter that often.
Twitter and Instagram following. Charlie Kirk's influence over the base, right? Alone. Charlie Kirk's influence on the base alone. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So Charlie Kirk's influence, right? He has well over 3.7 million followers on X. He has 7.6 million followers on Facebook and 1.1 million followers on Instagram. Charlie Kirk's, let me take a snapshot of that so you can put that as well. Charlie Kirk's influence as someone who shifts his stance on Israel after being such a pro-Israel supporter, and his ability to garner attention very fast, right, on social media, he became a prime target the moment he started shifting his stance on
and
Israel.
it was ever so slight of a shift in stance. Like it was
the number of followers. It was the number of followers that he influenced. Like he has more followers, right? He has more followers, right, than Candace Owens to some degree.
Right. Yeah.
And the amount of public, and I just uploaded another one. If you could pull up the stats for his following, we know that most of the boomer generation plus millennials is on Facebook. Facebook was the it before Instagram, and people read the comments more on Facebook. Twitter is for the ADHD followers who are probably Gen Z, millennial. I'm one of those ADHD followers, right? Because I keep up with the news, but I have a 5-second brain span, and I haven't even quoted what he might have on TikTok, right? But when you have this wide of an evenly spread social media reach, and you change your stance on a country who's the third rail of American foreign policy, your likeliness for assassination. And I don't know, do you have the video on Turning Points when he spoke with Dave Smith? I believe he spoke with Dave Smith, and he spoke with Tucker Carlson as of April or June of this year.
I did not see that video, and I didn't have it.
He also had a recent interview with Ben Shapiro.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I played that earlier when you stepped out of Ben Shapiro, how he asked and it was interesting how he worded the question. He worded it very gently. And it's interesting that these shifts in Charlie Kirk in the past few days were just gentle, barely a pushback against, towing the line for Israel
versus the sharp tongue.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's right. And that just goes to show that and this is why I tell people, and I made a video about this, Charlie Kirk did not know what he was getting himself into. He did not understand that this is not a free speech ecosystem once you link up with Zionism. They want you towing the line 100%. And I think that he underestimated how dark of a world he had stepped into when he agreed to be a shill for Israel. And I believe that that's the case with a lot of these public figures and a lot of these celebrities. They don't know that they're just a tool. They think that that they have a stake in the game. They think that they're an equal investor. What they don't realize is they're disposable. They're expendable. But I want to shift real quick. Not shift, but I want to on this topic of conservatives and American First Sentiment. Bree, you're in the heartland. You are in Iowa. That is, half my family is from Iowa as well, and I know how red it is there. But I also know that because of people like you, the sentiments have been shifting in those areas. Where do you see this talk about civil war and this hatred of the far left? Do you see some cross-pollination happening where you see some, relatability between the right-wing working class towards these revolutionary talking points and these revolutionary liberation movements? Do you see that happening? And tell me what that looks like over there.
Well, we were starting to see some intersectionality as far as, I wouldn't say here specifically, but this goes back to what do we think the goal was, the purpose of this, right? There's intersectionality between like the left and the right here, where they agree on things like, okay, our U.S. taxpayer money shouldn't be going to funding foreign wars, right?
Right.
Also, they agree on wanting to release the Epstein files. So those two things. So from my perspective here, there are not very many people that are aware of what is really going on in Gaza, the history of the Palestinians' plight, like the plight of the Palestinians, and what all that is about. It has always been painted as if it's some religious war that was initiated by Muslims. And that is the narrative post 9/11 that has stuck in the minds of those in the Midwest. And they have never looked further into it at all. right?
Mhm.
Took everything post 9/11 at face value. So anything in the media that is manufacturing consent for this genocide is also, you know, taken at face value. So people like me, um, talking to, you know, your typical mega supporter, explaining this stuff, you know, and obviously for me, this is something where I have to do it on a, you know, basis of like when I have the opportunity to talk to people face to face, because it's not something that if I throw up on my, say, my Facebook, that people are gonna pay attention at all, right? So what I am thankful for is platforms like such as Tucker Carlson's and Candace Owens that is bringing this issue to the forefront. Right now, do I support them because we agree on our stances on all this? No, I don't. But they are definitely a tool and a means to an end for me to start that conversation with people because they listen to
Right.
their stuff. Right?
They already have a repertoire with
Yeah.
conservatives, so they
Yeah.
touch on those religious,
So
I guess,
yeah,
yeah,
so for me, the
Christian
simple
nationalists.
fact that I've had on a couple of different occasions within the just recently of people asking me about it because, you know, they've seen a couple of my posts, right? So they know where I stand. They never looked into it, don't care, it doesn't affect them.
Mhm.
However, when they're listening to Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson speak, they're like, wait a minute, this is something that Brianna's been talking about for like 2 years now. What is
Mhm.
this? Like, why, like, you know, why are they upset? Like, what does Brianna know about this? So it's that point where people are coming together and uniting, realizing that this curated divide of these culture wars and different things between the left and the right, it's all just puppeteering, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, I actually tried to talk to people even before, you know, before we get into the subject of Palestine or Israel or what's going on. And me and you, we've talked about this before, Mark.
Mhm.
Is you find something that you have in common with
Yeah.
with them, you know. So
Yeah.
if you know, I'm talking to someone who's mega and they crack a Biden joke, yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with that. And they're like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, so
Yeah.
now I know. So then they assume that I am a supporter of Trump. And I'm like, no, 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 listen, no, they are, you know, yeah, yeah. They are just two different, you know, sides of the same coin, right? And so yeah, I pull them in with that, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's always a great common ground that I've found is when they talk shit about liberals and they talk shit about the Democrats, including Biden and Harris. I'm like, hell yeah, it's an easy in. It's such an easy in, and I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of people on the left don't embrace that commonality because they're scared that they're going to be associated with Biden and Kamala. So whenever they hear a far right person talking shit about Biden and Kamala, they're automatically defensive because they think they're going to be put in that box. And that's where you clearly just step and be like, yeah, fuck Biden, fuck Kamala.
Well, and what
What?
they don't realize, a lot of people that want to be on one side or the other, like, you know, you see those typical comments of like, oh, you're a lib or you're this or you're that. And they name each other because it's black and white to them. It's black and white, but it's not black and white. Everything is connected to money and power.
Mhm.
If you look at lobbying groups for these politicians on either side of the aisle, you know, and then I go back to the culture wars. Okay. So for instance, being, you know, pro-choice or anti-abortion, right? Those are
Mhm.
huge. That's a huge thing that people will strictly just vote on,
Mhm.
especially within the Christian community. So it's and so these are conversations that I have with people. I'm like, have you ever looked into, you know, some of these politicians that are being put up to be, you know, that are running for different seats, right? You'll see that whether it's Republican or Democrat, like the, these groups will fund someone who still disagrees with them on those huge things that you are only voting for because
Mhm.
it comes down to money.
Mhm.
There's often that you know, the Republican Party, there have been cases, sorry, where the Republican Party has, you know, has funded and helped with a campaign for someone who's running for a, you know, a seat in the Republican Party for Congress, whatever. And they are they are anti-abortion.
Mhm.
Or wait, did I say that right?
They're
No, they're
pro-choice.
pro-choice, and
Yeah.
vice versa. Sorry.
Right.
I'm
No,
sorry.
yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I do.
but they keep us separated, the general public, because our mass media controls the narrative.
Yeah.
That's who controls it, and we have blindly trusted mass media for so many years. Well, you start looking at, board of directors and the people that are funding these things, you'll keep finding those connections and those ties, and it all comes down.
Especially in the Midwest and the older generation, because the Midwest is, I mean, most of the country has striven away from mainstream media like Fox News and CNN, but I would say that in the Midwest, it's still pretty popular. It's one of the few places it's popular.
Yes. I will say that in the Midwest, they are very popular, whether it be just turning it on, like if they have cable and they're watching Fox News, or if they're just following any Fox News platform, or even CNN, because I remember I said, we've talked about, like, I support neither party. And for anyone that's listening that disagrees with me, I just want to say, are we truly a democracy when we don't have a choice than to have more than those two parties?
Yeah.
And if you look into the laws that have been created by those two parties historically, those two parties are the reason why a third party, it is almost impossible for them to win an election.
Mhm.
Not to mention, this was never the intention of the founding fathers, is to have a two-party system.
So you, Brianna, you make a good point. So I want to bring up these laws, and we're going to start with. Remember, I'm the resident prior hardcore conservative. Now I'm not so much. I want to point out something about the laws that both Democrats and Republicans, it's 36 state assemblies have approved, that say that Americans, if you're a conservative, and I want you to listen, this is a guy who's been a Florida man, who's a guy who lived in the Midwest. I've lived in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa. I've lived in major Democratic city, being born in Chicago. So I've lived around, and I was in the Marine Corps for 7 years. Your politicians, right? You see three unlikely minds on the same call converging together. The division that Brianna is pointing out is, she said, both parties do three types of things. The first one is they pass laws against Americans, and I'm going to bring that up real quick. The 36 laws that are anti-BDS laws that all general Americans, whether you're conservative or Democrat, can agree on. And they're not just red states, they're also blue states too. 36 states with anti-BDS laws. The reason why I want to bring this up is because the laws, right here, I'm going to choose. Here's a snapshot of the states, right? And I'll bring up my screen because we're recording this anyways, right?
Yeah.
The laws passed in these states, predominantly these states, are not all. You guys can see my screen?
No, I can't.
Let me just right here. Right about here, 36. Here we go. Boom. Can you guys see my screen?
Let's see. Hold on.
You see my screen? You see it?
No, I don't think you can share your screen.
Let me see. I'll take a snapshot.
If you can, then
it says I'm sharing. So let me try again real quick. Share screen. If I can share my screen. Let me see right here. Let me do entire screen. Let's do the entire screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
No, I don't think it works from your end.
Does it work for mine? Can you see it or no?
No.
Okay, maybe. All right. So it looks like. So what I was going to show you is, because it's showing my screen, showing that I'm sharing. But basically, the 36 states, whether blue or red, even Illinois and California, have anti-BDS laws, just to point that out. But here's a sample shot. Here's a sample of the types of states that have, and I like to put these pictures because it helps really consolidate my point, is that these states have these anti-BDS laws, and these laws were passed by both Democrats and Republicans. And the thing about what the founding fathers did not see America becoming was, one, there's a purposeful separation of church and state. And what we're witnessing with the passing of the anti-BDS laws is that, here you go. Here's the sample of the states, right? And I just dropped that in the carousel. The anti-BDS laws force you as an American, whether you're in a blue state, a red state, Florida, a purple state, right? Connecticut, a blue state, to not be able to say that you don't want to do business with another country that has nothing to do with the United States of America. You don't have to be a conservative, a liberal, a Democrat, gay, straight, whatever. Just be a general tax-paying American, right? That's what we all are. To understand that it's fucked up. The second part of not having these unconstitutional laws passed against you is the uniparty rule, right? The uniparty that we've seen form that prevents a third party from coming to fruition. A perfect example, and I'm going to pull up something that was, even though Jill Stein was less than 1% of the vote, right? I'm going to show you the Democrats and Republicans sue third party candidates. Okay.
Oh yeah. And these every state has particular different things that a third party candidate needs to do in order to be able to get on the ballot. And each state can make up their own, their own laws as to what a third party candidate needs to do in order to get on the ballot in said state. So you have the two major parties that are suing third party candidates in each of these states. Who has what third party candidate has the funds to fight back the duopoly in how many states?
And do you know what this leads to, right? When you sue a third party off the ballot, you get an unhappy marriage and relationship of corporate Democrats. We're just going to talk about the left for a minute. Corporate Democrats, progressive like AOC, who initially started out as someone who upended an incumbent, but then eventually gets brought into the fold over time through political erosion or coercion, right? And you start to see these leaders who are supposed to represent you voting on bills that are against the American interest. And this is where the marriage of unhappy alliances that become happy start to come together. And that is when you have the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, the Anna Kasparians, the Cenk Uygurs, the Mehdi Hassans of the world, right, start to make more sense in alignment with their messaging of what the national public wants versus these Trumps, Kamalas, Bidens, your Nancy Pelosi's, your Chuck Schumer's, right? These Orwellian type Democrats and Republicans, right, who don't represent the interests of the people, and all of their actions, whether they pass laws against Americans to boycott foreign nations, like it was easy for us to boycott South Africa, or they pass laws or sue potential rivals or competitors off of a stage when those are the budding national interests, whoever you align with. I'll pass it back over, but I just wanted to point out a couple of those points.
One of the interesting things about these laws that are put into place that make it illegal for us to boycott or participate in BDS, right? Is that why? Like, what is the reasoning? They're not even our top, like in our top five, like large, like as far as trading goes with the US, right? They're not even in the top five of being one of the biggest trading partners.
Not even 2%. Not even 2%. And while you're talking to that, I'll pull up the facts for that.
Yeah.
Well, they've certainly leaned on it hasn't been practical or logical reasons in how they've been able to convince Americans to, allow for this undying loyalty through BDS laws amongst Americans. It's been purely religious. It's been purely evangelicalism. Like if they were relying on logical reasons or strategic reasons or economic reasons, it wouldn't have made any sense from the get-go. But it solely relies on the evangelical loyalty to Zionism and to Israel, and that's what they've had to rely. That's what they've had to bet all their chips on, is the psychological and religious indoctrination from these churches. And it just goes to show how powerful religious ideology is in this country if these churches are co-opted.
But even for people who aren't religiously motivated, the money that's tied to it, that is a huge motivation for most people who don't even care about the religious side of it.
Right. And what you bring into the fact is we're touching on 2 points here, right? The religious side is, can you bring up the interview with Ted Cruz where Tucker Carlson calls him out on where he mentions, well, those who do whatever for Israel or
I don't have it prepped. I don't have these videos. I have to prep these videos and add them in the studio.
Are you able to share your screen? Because I don't know if we can share and bring it up, but in paraphrasing the video, and we can put the link in, I'll drop the link in the chat, but Tucker Carlson interviews Ted Cruz, who, by the way, is not even American. He's Canadian, who pretends to be a very Texas Latino I'm Latino. A very Texas Latino conservative guy who is from a foreign country and very heavily against immigration.
And he's very anti-communism, right? Because why? Do you know why he's very anti-communism? It was in that
I
same
would love to know. I would love to know because him and his brother seem to have a foothold, being Canadian citizens, on
because
Texas politics.
he says his father was tortured under the Bautista regime, right?
And Batista was the regime that was upended by the communists.
So can I point something out? As my grandma was Cuban. Bautista was a puppet put in power by the U.S. and he was much like the who do I point out? Castro, and I believe me, I'm not a fan of communism or socialism. Let me just put that very much out there. The dark version that was painted a picture in our 1990s post-Cold War era education in America is a version I don't like, but I also understand that there are good things about each ideology. So let's dispel that. Oh my God, a conservative saying that he might see the understanding of some communal or social type values. We're way past the Orwellian 1965 nightmare because we're all living in a fucking nightmare right now. We wouldn't all be on this call if we weren't way past that. Pardon pardon my French and my ooh la la, but that's where we are. But to the point, when you look at a guy like Batista, the Batistas, the Sandinistas, the Banana Wars, right? Every state that's ever been subverted or was forced to be made a client state had a installed dictator. Allende, Pinochet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the fuck his name was in Dominican Republic. Does anyone remember that movie, Las Tres Mariposas, the Three Butterflies? There were three women in the Dominican Republic. There was a Dominican general that was a dictator over the Dominican Republic. Basically, he was installed by the U.S. The only reason why he was taken out is because he tried to assassinate a U.S. leader in the streets of D.C. back in the 60s or 70s. But then if you can look that up, quote, fact check me, please. I always love to be fact checked, so I'm not off the beat. Right. But the problem is people like Batista in the Middle East, people who refuse to be a client state are labeled as regimes. Mm-hmm. And what we see here in the U.S. is, with not going too far off, is that a lot of our own boogeymen, are created by the same leaders who have been in power for the last 30 or 40 years. People as old as my grandmother and almost my great-grandmother now are still in power, and they're recreating the same boogeymen. They're recreating the same political scenarios with more advanced technology and choosing their assassination patterns based on where public opinion is starting to change. Mm-hmm. And I'll leave that wide open for you to shift that, but that's something I want to point out. I know I just went on a tangent about Batista, but
no, that's okay. Cause it all becomes, it's all connected, so that goes back to another thing about me talking about the curated culture divides, right? Yeah. One party is completely anti-immigration, to the point where many people that are supporters of the Republican Party are just straight up racist, right? Mm-hmm. And that's their reasoning also, whatever, many factors. But when I speak with people going in my community that are, they have this typical line: I'm not against immigrants. I just want them to come the right way. I want them to do it legally.
Yeah, that's
I
always
ask, do you know what that process entails? I don't know. No, they really don't. They don't know the specifics. Okay. So the people that have the loudest opinions know the least on how it actually works.
Yeah.
Second, I try to explain that many of these people that are coming seeking asylum don't want to leave their homeland. Mm-hmm. And a majority of the time, if you look back in history, our own government has played a part in destabilizing their countries.
Yeah.
I mean, how many coups has this government been a part of in actually overthrowing democratically elected leaders in other countries?
Yeah. The analogy I always give is if I go to my neighbor's house and I walk right into his house and set his house on fire, and then he has to leave with him and his family they have to leave that house because it's burning down. And they flee to their neighbor's house, and I go in and burn their neighbor's house down. So those two neighbors, those two families, they go in and then say, well, we're homeless. We're going to go in your house. Can I sit there and then complain that they're in my house because I burned their houses down? It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous concept, but it's because they're so uneducated about the predatory actions of the U.S. empire throughout the years, because again, they don't pay attention to international history. They don't pay attention to foreign policy. It's just all
That,
happening
or
in the
how
world.
much immigrants contribute to our economy that they never get a return on.
And the safety and the safety that immigrants contribute to our neighborhoods. It's statistical fact that undocumented immigrants, when they move into a neighborhood, the crime rate goes down. It goes way down.
Mm-hmm. And they're less likely to illegal immigrants, mind you. My stepfather was. I grew up in a very illegal immigrant neighborhood. I'm not going to name it for avoiding ICE or impact reasons, because I grew up. Chicago's a very big area, so I'm not going to put my area under fire because I become a target. Statistically, they're more, unless it's a cartel that's moved in, which is very rare, and it's usually mostly border states, and not every border state has a cartel, right? Or there's some American domestic gang-rooted activity, because the area's economically for decades been suffocated from actual federal funding and investment. The crime rate usually doesn't peak above 5 and 10%. Now, if you talked about post-90s, the last immigration wave, which came from Latin America in the late 80s, early 90s, right? Most immigration now from 97 till now has been, with most cities, the crime has relatively been stagnated. It hasn't gone above what its previous levels were. And in most cases, like if you look at when the National Guard was deployed here to DC or being deployed to Chicago, it's to areas that have not had relative crime rate, a rise in crime in almost 15 to 20 years. So when you think about illegal immigration and how much they contribute to the economy, let's talk about that for a second. I have colleagues of mine that I will not name once again, who've been on certain projects working with the IRS, who've seen what's called, there's a file called it's something along the lines of like undistributed, unclaimed income tax funds. It's some file like that, right? And basically there's 350 million Americans per year who, of those 350 million, there's about maybe between 96 and 120 million who are actual tax-paying adults, and that's counting those that are legal, and that we're not counting the undocumented, right? Of the undocumented, which are ranged to about 11, maybe between 11 and 15 million, right? They are unable to claim. They contribute in overall paying at point of sales in stores about $99.6 billion per year at point of sale when they buy groceries, when they buy things like cars, or they're paying utilities, right? Now, in unclaimed funds, let's say if they were to use what's called an ITIN, an identifiable tax identification number, right? They contribute about $26.3 billion that they cannot claim because they are not legal citizens. If you add that in addition to American taxpayers who don't file income taxes or don't file income taxes to reclaim their funds, that is about another, I want to say, 36.5 estimated billions of dollars. So 36.5 plus $26 billion from, unregistered, undocumented immigrants, that's $56.5 billion estimated that's unclaimed each year that the government and the IRS absorb into what's called special direct projects, where they can take that money that's unclaimed that hits a 3-year marker or 36 months when it goes unclaimed, that becomes forfeit to the average taxpayer. So imagine 26 billion on average with an immigration timeline of 15 years, right? That's an anticipated 26 billion, or the equivalent 26 billion backdated by 15 years in the past till now, unclaimed each year, that goes into the overall economy. And if you look at the major states that need that offset, Texas, California, Florida, places like Wisconsin, Wyoming, Nebraska, New York, places that already have a massive state debt, right? You would think that you'd want to keep those people there who, and it sounds kind of cynical, right? But it's almost like the Republicans and Democrats who vote on the bills to deport these people are shooting themselves in the foot when their whole intention and promise their tax-paying U.S. citizen is to reduce the overall cost of taxes on that citizen. Immigrants or migrants, however you want to call them, people here who are here illegally, are the third pillar of our economy. And if without them, who picks the vegetables? We have whole ranches in the agricultural sector struggling right now that are billion and multi-billion, almost $1 trillion industries who don't have workers.
So, Brianna, this is a great question for you. You're in Iowa, which is farmland territory. Do you see any shifts in sentiments amongst your average Iowan regarding like this ICE crackdown, the deportations, the inhumanity of it? Do you see some empathetic viewpoints being expressed? Do you see any type of changes happening?
So, we have a family in this community that is close to a lot of people in the community, and they have been educating others on what the situation has been.
Mm-hmm.
They in educating others, the people in this community are like, that's not right, because they've come to humanize, love, and get to know these people, right? And so when it is explained their own situation, they're upset. They're like, that's not right. The government shouldn't do that. And, pull the rug from under you, have one promise under one administration, and then say, oh no, you're not here legally anymore because we nixed this program that you're here under. And they're like, that's not fair, right? And so people within my community are starting to understand that, but now they only see it in the lens of these particular people that they care about. I don't think it's really gotten to the point where, because I have said to these people that this is not isolated. This is all the time, right? And this is why we need immigrate to reform our laws, right? But going back to the Republican and Democrat, the two-party system working together to keep these culture divides, this is a large part of it. Because if you want to talk about immigration, right now we see that it's mainly very conservative. It's conservative, Republicans that are like, yeah, go ICE, do this, do that. But still, even to now, the largest deportations are done under the Democratic administrations, not Republican.
Yeah, and the borders are Trump's current border czar was Obama's border czar. He was known as the deporter in chief. So I would think that if we exploit these similarities between Obama and Trump, I would hope that gives Trump supporters a clue that this is actually a bipartisan thing. And if there's one thing that a Trump supporter does not want to be accused of, is being a Democrat or being anything similar to, or in any type of way associated in approving of what Obama did.
Right.
And I feel like that's another way we can kind of, infiltrate them in their mindset, is that, look, Trump is completing Obama's wet dreams right now with building the ICE camps, building these labor camps. These were things that the right wing was paranoid. They were paranoid under the Obama administration that he was going to create a police state. That was and I feel like everybody has amnesia from that. And I'm thinking yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I thread the needle to tie back in the Charlie Kirk thing to this?
Yeah, go for it.
Charlie Kirk spoke on issues about foreign policy. The right wing that I grew up around talked about how they were afraid of these camps happening, and that they would happen under a leftist, but they're happening under a Republican. And while they happen under a Republican, at the same time, the rights that they thought conservatives and progressives now are coming to the same conclusions or same overlapping thoughts is it's been a two-party thing. The Democrats put the policy in place. The Republicans get blamed for being the hammer, but the actual actions happen under the Democrats. And at the same time, there's two parts of foreign policy. Immigration is used as a shield to deflect from the wartime foreign policy we use. Whenever something happens internationally, the bombing of Iran, the Iraq or the Afghanistan war, immigration is used as the deflective shield of foreign policy to distract. And they always pick the same group, Latinos, to blame Latinos or any other foreign group to distract from the fact that the real billions of dollars is walking out through legalized laws in billions, almost $500 billion, out the other door. So they blame the people who are contributing $99.96 billion through point of sale taxes, while not being able to claim those income taxes, as illegal immigrants. But the real fraud is happening through the Foreign Appropriations Committee, the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, the House Committee on Appropriations in Congress. And it's both Democrats and Republicans who vote for the same damn fucking things. I'm going to go on a rant real quick, okay? These fucking assholes are breaking constitutional laws, robbing the average American taxpayer, regardless of what color, ethnicity, who you identify as. Blaming illegal immigrants, saying that immigrants are the ones fucking doing this. And even if I can deplatform, if I can decolonize myself and bring myself back to the base, right? If you're going to say that you're based, whatever you are, the real fraud is happening in these committees, and it's being written up in the HRR bills. The first flag, the red flag you should see, is Bill HRR 7882 that sent expedited $17.6 billion to Israel. That is the fraud. That is the U.S. foreign policy fraud. Illegal immigration is used. Illegal immigration is used as the deflective, redheaded poster child, stepchild that gets used to be the dead horse that keeps getting beat. But if anyone has an inkling of common sense, you understand, Arab, Latino, black, white, whatever, the real fraud is the heightened taxes on you, the promise of relief. And then a perfect example of this is your average taxpayer that makes maybe less than $50,000 a year. It's COVID time, early 2020 to 2022. You receive a stimulus check from the same taxes that you pay, but you're told, oh, we're here to help you, but it took them 6 to 18 months to give you $600 to $1,200.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But illegal immigration is blamed, but they're able to send $36 billion. We don't even know how much, $56 billion that went to Ukraine so far over the course of since 2014. On top of that,
a lot more.
Mind you, these are very conservative estimates based on what I've read recently. I'm a little outdated in some of the articles, but somehow illegal immigration is to blame for these legal decisions being made that legally send the money out. And somehow our politicians buy war bonds, they buy stocks in these foreign corporations that are privately held. And somehow their overall net worth of $200K a year, $250K a year, they are able to vote on paying themselves annually, but they couldn't get you a stimulus check. Then you come to this point now where they blame illegal immigration. They're trying to clear out whole towns that contribute to the overall average revenue, tax revenue that local counties, states, and the federal government receive. Mm-hmm. But they're not pointing out the actual fraud that's being done behind closed doors with men in suits.
Yeah. Yep. That's the crux of it, isn't it? And that's what I try to drive home with right wingers is that, look, you're so concerned about this, like this xenophobia that you have, this boogeyman. It's always a boogeyman. And that's why I think it's important to exploit the Epstein situation as much as possible, because that's how you can direct their ire towards the right direction. Like, look, the guys who visited that island are in charge of ICE, who have impunity and complete, absolutely no restrictions based on the Constitution, and kidnapping people, taking them to an unknown location, separating children from their families. Black sites. You really want the people who visited that island to be in control of such a powerful apparatus that has that type of power? Like, this is the shit that you were afraid Obama was going to do. And now you're just...
Right. But here's the kicker. The left and the hard liberal leaning left was afraid that Republicans and hard right-wingers were going to round them up and throw them into camps because of what they identified as. The right-wingers were afraid that a radical leftist was going to come in and round them up and throw them and take away their freedoms and their Second Amendment gun rights.
Right.
But the reality of what's happening is the men who perpetrated the crimes of the Epstein files, let me repeat that again, the men and women, listen to it very carefully, the men and women who perpetrated the crimes of the Epstein files and the cover-up of the Trump conspiracy, the Trump Epstein Gate conspiracy that's now a reality, he has been leveraged by a foreign power, and he has appointed all the accused to be in charge of powerful apparatuses within this country, within the United States of America, to suppress, disclose, disgrace, remove, and to chop off the budding daisies of people within his organization that would go, or within the Republican or progressive or government base as a whole. This is federal appointed GS civilians who are patriots to the government, regardless of who's in power. And that would be a part of the reason why there's been all these people have been appointed. They've been appointed to be in charge of major apparatuses, CIA, DA, just generally appointed advisor type roles within the government. But at the same time, he's done this hacking of the government to remove those that could prevent or could force the files to be released. The Epstein files, and I'm going to call it now, and I put everything on my credibility of my entire professional career on this. The Epstein files will be worse than 9/11, Watergate, the assassination of JFK, and the Iraq and Afghan war. Do you know why? Because the entire leverage of the Epstein files instigated 2 whole wars, $12+ trillion in debt, and has been an institutionalized cover-up to the point where people across multiple sectors, across multiple industries, both in the private and public sector, are trying so hard to suppress this that the only reason why they don't have a hold on it right now is because the American Roman mob and the global mob have gotten together and decided to talk outside of borders to share information we wouldn't have otherwise seen.
I think you're really onto something with that, because that would make sense as to one of the large motivations on keeping the rhetoric us versus them, right? Either you're in or you're out of the group, us against them. Why they keep us divided.
Charlie Kirk is an example of this, and this is what I want to point out to what you're saying. Charlie Kirk, the reason why I say you're pointing out what you said about Charlie Kirk being the sacrificial lamb, he changed his rhetoric. You said it's us or them, you're in or out. And when Charlie Kirk changed his stance ever so slightly, and brought right-wing voices who were starting to disagree with what was going on, that is why he was taken out. I don't know any better way to say it.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm wrong, but this is what it is.
And I think there's 2 main reasons for taking him out. One is the main primary reason that they're really hoping for is civil war. 2, it's to send a warning to anybody who also might be currently towing the line with Israel, saying that, hey, you saw what we did to Kirk. You saw what we tried to do to various other people. You saw what we did to JFK. This is what happens if you go off the reservation. So I personally think it was just two main motivators. And of course, Trump is going to be making speech after speech claiming it's the far left. I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think a civil war is plausible right now because it's not plausible. And the people who he's hoping will engage in the civil war, they're too lazy to get off the couch. And they can't even get along with each other because you got MAGA and America First completely split. They hate each other more than they hate the left.
Mm-hmm. And when you circle that back with the MAGA and America First are going against each other, America First is starting to come together with the progressives and the non-liberal leftists who are saying, wait, you agree on children not being killed? Okay, I might be pro-life, you might be pro-choice, but if I'm a pro-lifer and I say I believe in children not being, if I don't believe in abortion, why would I believe in supporting a state that slaughters children or policies that slaughter children? If you were a millennial and you deployed or you were in the service, you are the generation of post 9/11. And if you are the generation of post 9/11 and you served in the military, you became pro-life at some point because of your affiliation with the military. And if you're pro-choice, you realize that choice isn't just the choice of women or individuals being able to choose what they want to do with their bodies. It's also the choice of self-sovereignty. And I think what the left and the right can agree on is we both want kids to live. We both like freedom of choice and whatever we want that freedom of choice to be within the bounds of not going too extreme, right?
And we're both anti-surveillance state. That's one thing.
Leave me the fuck alone and I'll leave you alone. That's how I feel.
Yeah, we especially don't want a Zionist in charge of a Zionist company like Peter Thiel and Palantir. I mean, these were the things that we were paranoid of under the Obama administration, you know?
But yet, these large events are what is justifying and normal. They're getting
normalizing
it, right? Mm-hmm. After 9/11, even if you were against surveillance, you had a big, sect of people saying, understandable, like, we don't want this to happen again. So, okay, I will give up my freedoms.
And do you know what they don't account for is the wild card. So what they keep on accounting for is the one card you can't account for is human nature. The was it Edward Snowden, the army kid who came forward who I forget what he was in the military. He went off the reservation into Afghanistan, learned what he learned, and came back. Right. What they're trying to account for now through the cleanup of the government is to remove anybody. Let me pull up the colonel who was removed from the Pentagon for saying that Israel is a death cult. Colonel Anthony. I'll bring him up here real quick. What they're doing is both in the federal civilian and military and the military sector, right, in any armed forces service, right, and the State Department people like Hala Rarit, who we've all seen speak on these issues, is they're removing anybody from a position of credibility that they can in order to facilitate and catalyze and politically capitalize on these events that are occurring. Because it wasn't 20 years, events like that are happening every month now, were every 5 to 10 years. And now they're trying to do what we call controlling the height of the flame. But the problem is the flame of these individuals like Edward Snowden and people going off the reservation like Charlie Kirk, people like Tucker Carlson, Thomas Massie defecting en masse. Charlie Kirk's assassination, in the list of all the other assassinations that have gone on, was meant to try to scare the base or to steer the base to create a martyr event in order to keep people from leaving in droves. The phrase is, how do we stop the bleeding? But the bleeding is in multiple wounds. If you look at them bombing Iran and trying to get us to go to war, what did Charlie Kirk say about Iran? He said, and I'm not sitting here, I agree with everything that the guy ever said in his career. No, I don't. I don't ever agree with anybody, because you got to be a complete dumbass to just agree with one person and just go with everything that they say, because not everything they say is in your interest. I would hope, and anyone who's listening to this, who hears this, if there's anything you disagree with me about, fact check everything that I'm saying. I'm always open to that correction. But when you look at a guy like Charlie Kirk, who changed his stance, along with others like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith, Joe fucking Rogan. Let's pause right there. And that guy has a whole other can of worms. It tells you a lot about the state of things. This assassination was more than what it appeared. They're trying to stop the bleeding. And in this case of us not wanting a surveillance state, not wanting to be the people gutting the government, it's all about removing people who can counteract the ability for the state and non-state but state-affiliated private sector actors from being able to capitalize on the event. The Edward Snowdens, they didn't account for these guys. And with the little guy, if some of these assassinations are organic, right, it has completely changed the trajectory of the playing field, politically or otherwise. Foreign policy, state-based, but there's a whole can there. But it's when you bring it into focus, the interconnectivity of all the events, it really starts to make you think about these things.
Yeah.
Also looking at the treatment of people that are doing the morally right thing, such as Edward Snowden and like Julian Assange, you see the goals.
Right. They illegally and administratively detained Julian Assange until he signed a paper, an affidavit claiming that he was wrong, but everything he said was right.
What?
Here's the kicker. If you want to know who's in charge or who's in power, look at who you're not allowed to criticize. I think that's a very good segue right there. If you want to know who's in charge or who's in power, look at who you are not allowed to criticize and what you're not allowed to criticize.
Yep. That has been the pattern. I think that, we're at the 2.5 hour mark, and I think the conclusion here is that, whatever it was that happened 2 days ago, it's not going to have the effect that I think it's going to have. And I think that's very much thanks to the people who have been putting out content that question everything, that question the events, even the conspiracy theories, even if these conspiracy theories are completely off and they're just one of many that is off the mark and it doesn't have facts to it. Regardless, sowing doubt in the minds of the public who buy the main narrative and who shift the public's sentiments away from what they want you the place that they want you to be, whether it be like, oh, let's blame the far left for this. Let's engage in heavier, state surveillance. Let's instigate more laws that give law enforcement more abilities to arrest or violate our constitutional rights. Anything that causes that narrative to fall short within the American ears who are waking up is a bonus. So I appreciate you all coming on.
Yeah. Just to add to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Going back, I just want to say that I really reject the negative views and connotations that come with being labeled a conspiracy theorist, because, like you said, people are challenging the mainstream, narrative. I just want to add to that, like, we should all be critical thinkers. We should all not just blindly take something, right, without doing due diligence. So, yeah, if you're a conspiracy theorist, welcome.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the fold. Remember, look at what you're not allowed to criticize. Look at my grandmother used to say this because my grandmother left Cuba. This is my dad's side. My grandmother left Cuba back in the 1950s after Batista was removed from power. And one of the things that she pointed out was this: if you want to know how your state or your policy or your rights are being taken away, look at the laws that are put into place. Look at who you're not allowed to criticize, and look at when power is too consolidated to the top. When every media outlet that's supposed to be contrary to one another starts saying the same thing, that's when you know the narrative is scripted. And when the narrative is scripted, it becomes questionable. And if it's questionable, then it becomes it's your job as the viewer to investigate it. The same thing like we're talking about here. And remember, every conspiracy has a thread of truth. The question is, where do those threads of truth come together to paint the full picture?
Yeah, I agree. And, if those two, platforms, two different sides of mainstream media, agreed on something that the rest of us could agree on is, morally right and good, great. But what they're agreeing on is something that has some serious, they have to really do mental gymnastics to justify what's happening. And this is what our two-party system is agreeing on.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was a perfect, I think the way that this episode came together in having you as conservative, Manny, who's in the pro-Palestinian movement, and you, Brianna, who's in the heartland of the United States in a conservative environment. I think it's great because we're going to see a lot of podcast episodes from left-wing podcast episodes talking about the Charlie Kirk thing. We're going to see conservatives. This is a great bridge between the two worlds. Me and the anarchist, world, Bree, you trying to build the bridges from those two worlds, and then you, Manny, who you're a self-proclaimed conservative, but you are very revolutionary, and you're building your bridges to the left as well. So I think this is a great segue. So either way, no war but class war, and I hope and pray that whatever agenda was behind the assassination of Kirk, it will fall flat on its face, and it will only do more to expose the agenda about what they're trying to do. So that being said, guys, get out there and spread some class war propaganda. Always remind people, hey, where are the Epstein files? Do not let that go. And if you see somebody on the extreme right trying to spread xenophobia and hatred towards the far left, just accuse them of being part of the Epstein class and being part of the same club that the Democrats are a part of. That's a strategy. So
that's another thing they agree on, is not releasing the files.
Absolutely. Bree, thank you so much for the research you did prior to this episode, helping us with our website and starting your charity for Gaza and being a part of this whole movement since the beginning and holding it down, holding the line in the heart of America. You're doing a great job. Appreciate your friendship. You as well, Manny. Manny, you're a genius, a prodigy, no doubt, since a young age. I appreciate you being part of this movement and for offering your skills and expertise in your fight for humanity, bro.
I'm a human first. I'm a human before I'm political. And there's no reason why, regardless of who you are, where you grew up, why you should ever be okay with seeing children die, especially live streamed. I never thought in my time in the service and after my time in the service and my time being around government, my time being traveling some of these countries, like as of 2022, I was just in Qatar. I was just at the World Cup. I sat in the stands with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people from Tehran. Met nothing but good people. Why we should be sitting here witness the co-signing of the death of America on the part of a nation no bigger than the size of New Jersey. I'm here, no matter whether if you agree with everything I say or not, I'm here to support your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that's what we're all striving, whether you're an immigrant or not, whether you're someone who was born here or not. I think that we can all agree that humanity first.
100. Absolutely. Love you guys. Thank you so much for coming on and spending your Friday afternoon with me. This is a long episode, really long one, but I'm cool with that. It's a Friday.
Sorry.
No, absolutely not. Bree, thanks for coming on. Love you guys. Guys, go check out the website. We will be almost forgot. We will be adding Manny's very good guidebooks he put together on debating Zionists from conservative Zionists and offering them historical information, counterpoints, everything. We'll be uploading that on colonialoutcast.com in the resource repository page. So thanks to Bree putting that website up and helping me arrange the aesthetics of that. With that being said, stay out there and keep waging class war, fam. As always, love you.